The fake news media. What exactly is that? That's what we're talking about in today's video, because guess what? Believe it or not, we've all consumed propaganda and fake news media. Did you know that most news sources, television and on the internet, are owned by the same major companies and don't accurately report the facts? This is referred to as fake news and propaganda. It has been around before the internet even existed. However, over the years, people have begun to wake up and become aware that they have been lied to. The truth eventually comes out, as it cannot be hidden for long. People are aware and awake and know now more than ever that the news they are consuming is mostly propaganda. The whole purpose of fake news and clickbait is to instill fear in the viewer to keep them coming back. Many of these news sources are considered echo chambers, meaning they will present information to you that you want to hear as opposed to the truth. It's more comfortable hearing things that align with your perspective. This makes the viewer hate the opposition. If the viewer ever listens to or views opposing news, they will be faced with cognitive dissonance, where they hold one belief but do the opposite. Deep down, they may be aware of what's actually going on, but be in a state of resistance because the news media has caused them to be biased, judgmental, and discriminatory. The whole purpose of the mainstream news media is to segregate people. So fake news is essentially described as mostly the mainstream media, where they selectively pick certain information to present to the viewer and make it look extra bad or extra good, depending on which way they side. As I'm sure many of you are aware, this all comes down to politics. That's what it is, politics, Democrat or Republican. You have Democrat news stations, you have Republican news stations, and they're both guilty of this, because what they do is they will find information, just little tiny bits of information that may not be significant at all, and they will bring that to the viewer's attention and make it look better or worse than the other side, just to fit their narrative. If it's a Democrat station, if it's a Republican station, they both do the same thing. Okay? Also, the fake news media tends to be funded all by the same company, so it doesn't matter where you're consuming your news from. It could be from some of the same major companies that are controlling all of the news media. And the reason why they want to control all the news media is because they want to control you. They want to divide you. That is the whole purpose of this fake news media. So don't believe everything that you see and hear. Don't believe everything that you see and hear on the internet either. You have to get your information directly from the source. But how can you spot it if you don't quite know or are on the fence? The first place to start is to drop all mainstream media. This includes most every television news source, as well as online sources. Get your news directly from the companies, politicians, and presidents. Don't go through a third party, since they will misrepresent the story to fit their biased agenda, either more in favor of or against the truth, depending on what side they are on. Look for headlines that are clickbait and promote scare tactics. If you read a headline and are in shock right away, even a bit scared, it's likely propaganda, and you should immediately look up alternative news articles about it first. Get the truth, then go back to the article to see how mainstream media spun it. There is one big issue with alternative media. It is difficult to find. Finding alternative news sources tends to be harder to find because they do not have the funding mainstream ones do, and thus will not be suggested. Furthermore, alternative news sources promoting the facts are more likely to be censored. However, 2020 brought a shift in the media. Trust in the mainstream media dropped significantly in 2020, and alternative news sources began to become more mainstream. Alternative news sources will displace the mainstream ones over the coming years. So how do you know that you are consuming fake news? If it's the mainstream media, it's very likely altered in some way to instill fear and make you believe a false narrative. The reason for this is how you react and become biased or even hostile to people who think differently than you. We are all one, and the fake news media is only here to make it seem like we are enemies. If you feel hostile towards your fellow humans, that's a sure sign you are consuming fake news. Let me know how this works for you. Have a great day. So the fake news media controls all of our lives if we watch it, if we view it, if we read into it a little bit too much, because we're all guilty of consuming some of the mainstream media. Now, that's not to say that every single mainstream news source is going to be blatantly false or inaccurate, but if it is a mainstream news source and things seem a little bit out there, then certainly just take a step back and realize, okay, what's actually going on here? What is their motive for saying these things, and why are they saying it the way that they are? I would probably venture to say that the majority of the news that they put out is not accurate, or there are some pieces that are accurate inside of the news source, but they manipulate it in a way that it makes it sound worse. And this is very evident with clickbait headlines saying, this person does this action and then they die. But when you actually go to read it, you will see exactly what they're talking about, and it's nothing like what the headline said. Even though the headline is accurate to a degree, it's not as bad as you were thinking. So it's all about that fierce mindset. If you read a headline and it makes you open your eyes and freeze for a moment, like, oh my gosh, I have to click on this and read this, it's for clickbait. It's for views. It's for you to go to it, read it, become scared, and then you may not even fully read the whole thing down to the very last line where some more truth comes out. So be aware of what you're consuming. Be aware of everything that is going on, because this is a very important thing. So be mindful of the news source you're consuming, and try to find alternative news sources. I'm so curious to know what sort of alternative news you consume. I'm really, really curious. Do you consume companies, or do you consume individuals that are just saying from their own experience what sort of critiquing some of the mainstream news sources as well? I've seen things from all sides, and I will look at the mainstream news media as well, just to kind of gather the whole picture here and see what the truth actually is when it comes to certain major subjects. So let me know what you think about this video. I'm sure it was helpful and educational to you, and maybe even woke you up to some of this fake news media that we have going around. So have a great one, and I will catch you later. Bye-bye now.